Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and this is part 10 of the little wreath embroidery that I'm doing. I'm creating a little wreath fabric journal with lots of little wreath embroideries in, and these are the last two that I've got left to do. These two are very small. The other ones are bigger in that they're about 3 inches or 3.5 inches in diameter. These are about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to stitch these two on this video. I'll then do a video showing how I put my fabric journal together and let you see the finished journal in all its glory. And that is my project for 2025. So I've got it done early. I didn't think I'd get it done this early. Anyway, I digress. So I'm going to start with this little one because I'm not too sure about the colours that I want to use on this one as yet. And as again, you will have seen from previous videos if you've been watching, I'm trying to stick with a very autumnal colour theme. So this one, I've lifted out these threads. There's some tiny little berries on here. I'll do a close-up of this wreath in a minute. There's tiny little berries, so I'm going to do them in this DMC thread, which is 817, as you can see. And then for the foliage, I'm going to mix it up a little and use a 580, and this one's 936. Again, DMC threads, because they're what I've got immediately to hand. For the tiny little berry sprigs, well, you know me and French knots, so they're going to be French knots. I'd like to say I'd do something else, but no, I just love doing my little French knots, so I'm going to do those. And for the leaves, well, I think really because they're so tiny, I may well do single chain stitch for those, and then for the branch work on here and the circle outline or the wreath outline, that is probably going to be split back stitch, I think, all worked in a single strand of the DMC thread. So I'm going to go away now. I'm going to thread up a needle. I'm going to start doing the vegetation, and I'll come back halfway through so that you can see what I've done. All right, I'll leave you with a close-up photo of this. So here we have the original design drawn with a Friction marker pen. These are my threads, my DMC threads, and here I'm already in the middle of doing my French knots. I've got a single strand of DMC thread to keep the knots quite small, and I'm just doing a couple of wraps for each knot. Quite a lot of picking up and putting down, because the way I do my French knots, I like to anchor my needle in something. If I'm in the lounge, I usually anchor it on a cushion or the arm of the sofa, but here I'm in my craft room, so I've got my New Zealand wool mat on my desk. I think they're used for quilting, but somebody recommended this mat to me a while ago, and oh, it's brilliant. It's lovely to sew on. So if I'm sewing in the craft room, I usually pop it on my desk, and here I'm using it to anchor my needle down and into it, because it's quite thick. It's probably about half an inch, if not more, in thickness. So I'm doing a couple of wraps of thread around my needle, and then putting my needle through the fabric and down into the felt mat underneath, and that helps me keep the tension on my thread that I'm holding in my left hand nice and tight and secure, and it helps me create my French knots. So there we go, that's all my little French knots done. So I'm now moving on to the leaves, and as I mentioned before, I'm using two different colours here. So I'm just going to let you see me stitch the one colour to start with. So randomly choosing a leaf, doing a detached chain stitch, sometimes they're called lazy daisy stitch, trying to get a bit of a point where I finish it off. And then just to fill it out a little, I do one, maybe two stitches inside the leaf. I've just done the one there. Sometimes if it's slightly fatter, then I'll do 2 straight stitches inside. I've got 2 strands of DMC thread here. It's actually one long strand that I've doubled over, because I'm using a number 10 straw needle, which is my favourite go-to needle, and it won't normally let you have 2 strands of DMC thread in it. If I'm very patient, I can usually thread it up with a couple of strands, but for ease I usually thread it up with one long strand and double it over. So I'm just going around my piece. I'll speed up the recording in a second or two because this will be like watching paint dry, I'm afraid. So just gently trying to not to pull the lazy daisy stitch or detached chain stitch too tight, and then just moving my threads over at various times to get the single stitch, straight stitch inside the lazy daisy stitch where I want it to be. And if you don't go down immediately on the other side of your thread but go a small bite above it, you can get quite a nice point, and it makes quite a nice leaf shape, especially when you're using this stitch on a design as small as this. Each one of those leaves is probably around about 4 mm in length, not very big at all. So I'll speed up the recording for you now. Just finish off this one. There we go. So as I've mentioned, I'm just randomly choosing some leaves to do in this colour, and then when I've gone all the way around, completed the leaves in that colour, I then go in with the other green thread and finish off all the leaves. And here you've got a close-up of the finished little embroidery. I've gone in with straight stitches for the branches to those berries. For the main circle of the wreath, instead of doing split back stitch as I thought I originally was going to do, I actually decided I would do stem stitch, and again that was worked in a single strand of DMC thread, but pretty close together so that it actually worked thicker. You probably know that the closer you work your stitches in something like stem stitch, the thicker your line will be, because the stitches are obviously much closer together. It needs a good press to get rid of the few fricks and marker pen lines, and also because I worked this one in a hoop because it was so small, I felt that would be easier to do. I need to press away those hoop marks. Okay, so now for this little one, I am going to hoop it up. Probably could work this one in my hand, but I'm not going to. And very naughty, I've not taped up my hoop. I've backed myself into a bit of a corner with all the other wreath embroideries I've done, because they're all very much autumnal colours, and this is the first time I'm introducing a blue into the wreath, so I need to be a little bit careful. So I've gone for a fairly dark blue, so I'm going to work this 936 for the vegetation here. I've got this perlé cotton, a little bit heavier than I would have liked. I'm not sure if this is a 6 or an 8. Let me just try and grab it so that you can see. I think that might be a 6. It looks quite heavy, but I thought I would do that up there. Now I would have preferred a 12 weight perlé, but I haven't got any, so this is what I'm going to have to use up there. And I thought that went particularly well with this to create sort of almost an autumnal darker theme to it. For the water, I'm going to go with this little one. I've got no number on this spool, but it is again DMC. I thought that would work in quite well. And for the seagulls, I've got this. Now, I think this is one of my Steph Francis hand-dyed silk threads. It's very, very fine. I haven't got an idea of what colour this is. I've lost my little label from inside, but I thought I would use this anyway for the seagulls because it's nice and delicate. Now, if all else fails and I don't like the thickness of this perlé across the top there, I thought I could perhaps use something off this spool. And again, I have no idea what this is. It's definitely a cotton, but it's finer than the perlé. It's probably equates to a DMC single strand, so I could use one of the darker strands out of here, so I might well do that. I'm going to hoop this up and get started. I'm going to do picot stitch up there, and that's why I wanted something fairly fine. For the vegetation, I'm going to do a lovely little stitch that I saw Jennifer Coulston do on one of her videos. Saw it, fell in love with it. Have no idea what it's called, whether it's an invention of hers, and I haven't got the link to her particular video, but I will link her channel down below if you want to spend time searching for it. But I hope that I can show you clearly enough how to do the stitch. Very easy. You know me, I only do easy stitches. Not sure what I'm going to do for my seagulls as yet, but we'll see. My water will probably be a couple of little split back stitches. Okay, so I'm going to get started and I'll be back with a demonstration of how to do this vegetation. So I've got myself all set up, ready to show you how Jennifer Coulston does that pretty little stitch, and I've realised that there's a slight design fault with choosing that particular stitch. But anyway, I will show you how she does the stitch, as promised. For those of you that know me, you'll know I have this little hoop. I call it my reminder hoop, remembrance hoop. It's just like a little practice hoop that I always have tucked away to one side. As you can see, I've been practicing a stitch here, and I just pull it out when I want to try a new stitch, practice a new stitch, or remind myself how to do a stitch. And it's usually bullion knots that I'm trying to remember what to do, but anyway, that's another issue. So I just put a very bad quilter's knot in the back of this piece of thread. I've got a number 10 straw needle threaded up with one strand of DMC thread that I've doubled over, and as I say, I've put a quilter's knot in the end. Now for these little stitches, Jennifer stitches them upside down. I think that's how she did them. I certainly stitched them upside down. So if this was the bottom of my piece where I wanted my stems to be, I'd flip it round. She comes up at the top of her plant, so it would be up here. She comes up, does what is the equivalent of a detached chain stitch. So I'm going down same hole, taking a bite of fabric, quite a big bite of fabric here, comes through my loop, same as you would normally do, and then just tension it up. Don't go too far because you'll end up with a long straight loop here, and then you just come down where you want the end of your stem to be. So I'm coming down there, and I'm going to do another little one in here. So I'm starting at the top. I'm going to angle it more towards this leaf for some reason. I want to do that. So I've come up, little bite of fabric like that, tension up my threads, and one of them has gone tighter than the other, so I'm just going to just sort that out. Which one is it? Yeah, it's that one. There we go. So I'm just going to hold that whilst I take up the tension on my needle, and then you just come down, maybe down there, down to where you want your stem to end. So another one without the voiceover, because that's not a particularly good one, looking at the shape of it. I'm just going to go in there, another little bite of fabric, tension it up, and come back down. And then you can always go in if you want, like I'm going to do here, and just put a couple of stitches in there. If you want to fatten up that flower head or seed head, you could go in with a different colour. I'm just going in with the same colour, and you could go over it a couple of times. if you wanted to. And if you haven't got enough of a point, you can obviously come up just very slightly above it, trying to get a stitch there like that, and just pop in a little straight stitch if you wanted to, like that, and make it a nice little pointed top to it. Now, I really like that stitch. As soon as I saw Jennifer do it, I thought, wow, that's a very useful stitch. You could do a couple of little seed heads, I'm thinking here as I'm doing this. You could do a couple of little seed heads on the top there, so I might just do that and just bob in another lazy daisy stitch, because I haven't really got my angle very correct on this top one, this big one. So let's just do that. I'm going to put another one in here, maybe here. So I'm going to flip it round again and come out of the base of this one like this. Something like that. And those two threads have split now. Oh dear, disaster. So I'm just going to do something like that. And you could maybe even do another one up here and tuck it underneath, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so yeah, that's what I was thinking of doing for here. But when I set this up to start stitching it, I realised that I've got a curve on these stems here. Anyway, I'm going to do a lazy daisy stitch up here and do a couple of straight stitches inside. I think that's what I'm going to do with that. And then for these, I will probably do a very, very large stitch, stem stitch. Okay, so here we go. I've got the little embroidery all hooped up. I've got the same setup again, one strand of DMC thread in the 936 in a straw needle. And I'm just going to go in and work these little ones. So as I mentioned, I've just gone in with a single lazy daisy stitch or detached chain stitch and just putting a few random straight stitches in the centre to give it a little bit of dimension and fill it in. Just finishing it off, and as you can see, I've done the other side. I'm doing the curve around the bottom and I'm doing fairly large stitches for my stem stitch, and again for the stems, stem stitch but slightly closer together. For the leaves on either side, and there's two in the middle, I've completed one on the left hand side, haven't done the one on the right hand side, but for the leaves I've just done some satin stitch. So this is what it looks like with the picot stitch going around the top. Quite pleased with that. Was a bit fiddly to do, but I still enjoyed doing it. And here I'm just doing the waves or the water with some split back stitch and a couple of straight stitches depending on how the mood took me. And again here, just straight stitches for my seagulls. So here we go, everybody. This is this final wreath done and dusted. These pistol stitches up here, as you saw, I resorted to using this thread, which I thought would be finer than using this one. Such a shame I didn't have this in a DMC thread, but I just thought that was going to be too thick. And yeah, they were very close together, so I actually couldn't follow the markings that were on the design. I had to put my own in, but I think they've worked out okay. It's a little bit wonky there. I'm not sure if that's how it's stretched in the frame or not, or whether I've done some wonky stitching there. But anyway, it's done and dusted now, so that's all my little embroideries done. So the next video you'll see is me putting my fabric signatures together and actually creating the little journal. Not sure if that's going to be 1 or 2 videos, but we'll see. But as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and until the next video, take care and happy stitching. Bye bye now.